Hi everyone, I'm Jessie Cao from Duke University. On behalf of my co-authors, I'm presenting our paper on women's privacy concerns toward peer-checking apps in the post-Roe v. Wade era. Let's start by looking at a timeline of Roe v. Wade. In 1973, the Supreme Court issued a decision in favor of Roe, holding that women have a constitutional right to an abortion. However, this landmark decision was overturned in 2022. Granting individual states the authority to legislate abortion laws. This led to the complete ban of abortions in 14 states as of this year. This decision jeopardizes reproductive justice and affects millions of women in the U.S., including their use of period-checking apps. Since the overturn, the privacy concerns toward period-checking apps have been aggravated, as evidenced by the increasing number of online articles and discussions. Privacy experts and scholars have suggested that period-checking apps track and collect a vast amount of sensitive data, including menstrual cycle, pregnancy, sex life, and location data. Worse yet, these sensitive data are excessively shared with third parties, including advertisers and insurance companies. In support of women's reproductive privacy, it is crucial to investigate women's privacy knowledge, perceptions, and practices toward period-checking apps in the post-Roe v. Wade context. However, despite increasing concerns, work that investigates the privacy factors of period-checking apps remains scant, mostly overlooking the impact of abortion-related laws. To address this critical gap, our work aims to answer three questions. First, what factors influence women's privacy perceptions and practices toward period-checking apps? Second, what are women's knowledge and attitudes toward the overturn of Roe v. Wade and its impact on the privacy concerns and practices of period-checking apps? Third, what are women's expectations for privacy-enhancing features, actions, and information from stakeholders such as period-checking app companies? To answer the research questions, we conducted an online vignette-based study, which leveraged the short hypothetical scenarios to elicit participants' privacy considerations. We analyzed the data from 183 female participants from the U.S., recruited through the crowdsourcing platform, Prolific. The survey consists of three sections. Scenario questions, multiple choice and open-ended questions about period-checking post-Roe v. Wade, and finally, demographics. We conducted a mixed methods analysis, including the cumulative length mixed model and a qualitative content analysis for the open-ended questions. To test the factors that influence women's privacy concerns toward period-checking apps, we quantified the impact of four privacy factors in the first section of our survey, including the type of collected data, data storage location, data sharing stakeholder, and user control. For each factor, we considered multiple levels. For instance, the data storage factor included two levels, device and cloud. Using the factor levels, there were 150 possible combinations. After eliminating the unrealistic ones, we were left with 75 possible scenarios. To ensure the response quality, each participant was tested with 4 randomly assigned scenarios. For example, this is one scenario that a participant might see. The 4 factors that we varied among scenarios are highlighted in yellow. Now I'm going to read this example scenario. Imagine you're looking for a period-checking app to install on your phone to keep track of your menstrual cycle. You see a period-checking app with the following data practices. The app only collects your menstrual cycle data, such as days bleeding. The app will store your data on a device. Your data will not be shared with anyone. You have the option to delete your data. After each scenario was presented, we asked the participants a question to capture the level of privacy concern toward the data practices of the presented scenario. Participants were allowed to answer this question on a 5-point Likert scale from not at all concerned to very concerned. In addition, in an open-ended question, we asked them to explain the justifications for the reported level of concern. After the scenario questions, we asked about participants' privacy knowledge and behavior toward period checking, especially after the overturn of Roe v. Wade. For example, we asked about their period checking usage, concerns, and risk mitigation practices, knowledge of period checking apps data practices, familiarity with the overturn of Roe v. Wade, and the perceived impact of the overturn on the period checking practices. For research question 1 that investigated the factors that influenced the women's privacy practices and concerns toward peer-checking apps, our CLMN regression analysis showed that with whom the data is being shared was the most significant factor in explaining participants' privacy concern. Following the data sharing stakeholder, the type of user control was the second most significant factor. Last, the type of collected data was the least significant factor in explaining participants' concern. The factor data storage location was insignificant in our regression analysis. More specifically, among the different data sharing stakeholders, law enforcement was most concerning. For different types of user control, compared to the data sharing opt-out option, the data deletion option was more significant in decreasing participants' privacy concern. The last significant factor was collected data. Specifically, collection of users' location was most significant in explaining participants' concern. In addition to quantitative findings, open-ended responses about what influenced the women's privacy practices and concerns toward peer-checking apps showed that only 8% of the responses from the first section discussed the overturn as a factor. Notably, we did not mention the context of Roe v. Wade until the second section of our survey. That said, without a Roe v. Wade context provided, the extremely low proportion of responses that attributed the concern to the overturn of Roe v. Wade potentially shows the general unawareness of the peer-tracking privacy risks post Roe v. Wade. This is one of the very few responses that discuss the overturn as a privacy factor. The participant from Minnesota said, "I decided last year, after the overturn of the Roe v. Wade, to quit tracking my data completely and decided never to reuse any tracking apps. The safety and reproductive freedoms in the US are simply too uncertain and dangerous. I don't trust the government or some apps, and I'm uneasy about my data ever getting shared with anyone or anything else." In fact, this finding from research question 1 also aligns with that from research question 2, which asks this important question. Did overturn impact the women's privacy attitudes toward peer-tracking apps? The answer is not really. As you can see from the figure on the left, 40% reported perceiving no impact of the overturn on a privacy concern toward peer-tracking apps. We also asked about the knowledge level of the privacy practices of peer-tracking apps. 40% reported being not at all informed of the privacy practices of the peer-tracking apps. In addition, when reporting what strategies the participants have taken in response to the overturn, very few of them felt sufficiently empowered to take action beyond deleting the apps. This shows a concerning status quo where peer-tracking app users are largely uninformed of the risks, data practices, and potential mitigation strategies. Some participants explained why they perceived the little impact of the overturn on peer-tracking privacy. For example, a participant from Washington said, "I never thought that the overturn would cause law enforcement or healthcare providers to require app companies to share peer-tracking data with them. But even if so, I'm not sure how it will impact the users, since usually you just mark your starting day, mood, weight, etc." Notably, after some participants were explicitly asked about influence post the overturn of Roe v. Wade, about 60% of participants indicated their perceived influence, which is still a sharp increase compared to the 8% of Roe v. Wade related responses in Section 1. This may suggest that users' privacy concerns toward peer-tracking apps still commonly exist, but just have not yet been contextualized in the post-Roe v. Wade era. We also asked the participants about their expectations for privacy-enhancing features and actions. In general, participants wish to have usable controls, encryption, granularity, and anonymization. They also called for app companies to improve the transparency of the privacy and security practices. In addition, they called for law sectors to enhance regulations for the peer-tracking privacy. Incorporating participants' expectations, we make these recommendations. First, we encourage peer-tracking technologies to increase data transparency, user control, and protections from law enforcement. For policies, we call for more considerations for potential conflicts with law enforcement sectors. Finally, public awareness of peer-tracking privacy should be raised through education by the press and educators. Due to time limits, we save more actionable recommendations in our fall paper. If you're interested, please feel free to scan this QR code to access our fall paper. Also, if you have further questions, don't hesitate to reach out. To conclude this talk, we argue that it's imperative to recontextualize women's period tracking privacy considerations post the Roe v. Wade and enhance data safety for multiple stakeholders, including the government. Thank you.